Hey, I got a question for you. Are you an active B2B consultant? Are you an experienced professional who is looking to start into the consulting industry? Or are you a student wondering whether or not starting a career in consulting is worth it? If yes to any of those questions, you are a great fit to have a 15 minutes free coaching call with me. And during that call, we will be looking at your career and life goals, as well as your current and past experiences. And we will also be able to figure out whether or not we can together build a roadmap towards building your desired career with your desired lifestyle. So don't hesitate to get in touch with me at consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. COACHING. Consultinglifestyle.fm/coaching. Now, let's go and listen to the episode. Hello and welcome to the Consulting Lifestyle podcast to Guillaume Wiatr. Guillaume, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic here. It's good to see you, Diogene.
Thanks. We are having the interview in English, but we are both French native speakers. I think it's one of the first, if not the first, French native speaker that I have on the podcast. So you Guillaume has a very wide consulting experience. It spans both France and the United States, and even different activities. Can you give the highlight of that of your career story so far, and then we dive deeper into that?
Only if I can put in some, I can use some French in it.
Yeah, yeah, you can, you can.
Just kidding. Yeah, well, just to give a bit of my backstory, I started in consulting kind of as a passion. It was really always I always wanted to be a consultant. I know it may sound weird, but my very first consulting engagement was when I was a student. I was part of a consulting association called Junior Entreprise in France, and it was 1993. So that would be what
30
30
years.
years, right? But I officially, and then I kept on, dabbling in that field. But officially, my first job as a consultant with my first employment as a consultant was 1998. So that's 25 years. I started in technology and strategy and working on large project implementation of the software called SAP, which I know you know very well, Diogene.
Yeah, yeah.
So I worked in technology for about 5 years and strategy, also at strategy in the mostly advising CEOs, leadership teams in e-business strategies, which was really, really hot at the beginning of the end of 90s to 2000s. So there was a lot of work to be done there, and you could do that with little experience as a young consultant because no one had really experience. So it was fine at the time. I never claimed to be an expert, but I claimed to be a consultant because I was exploring this field. And then I moved to, so I co-founded two companies in that space. One was a logistical transactional marketplace. And the second one was about content management. Everybody was so excited about e-business at the time that they almost forgot that to do anything in e-business, you have to have digital content. And it may sound now just so obvious to have digital content because we produce content digitally natively, but at the time, everything was on paper or on very ancient mainframe kind of big ERP systems, and that all needed to be translated into the internet format. I made a radical move in my career around 2000. So 5 years later, it was 2003, I think, and started a consulting, training, and coaching company called Thales. And I was really passionate about leadership at the time, and frankly, as I like the quote from Austin Kleon, all advice is autobiographical. I wanted to
Mm.
provide advice in leadership because I had made many leadership mistakes. So I wanted to correct myself, learn from it. And so the best way to learn something is to explore it and teach it with your clients sometimes.
Yeah.
So I did this until I married my wife, who's American, and she wanted to move to the United States in 2008. So I left that business, passed it on to my business partners, and reestablished myself here in Seattle in 2008. And I've been working for a couple of Seattle-based consulting firms specializes in people management and HR, and the other one in project management. Until I founded Mental Helm, which is now my own boutique consulting firm. And Mental Helm specializes in a practice that is maybe new and very different and unique, called strategic narrative. In fact, strategic narrative is now the proprietary name for my methodology. It's a trademark now. And what is strategic narrative is an approach for professional services firm to build something called narrative power. And narrative power is your ability to influence norms and values within your own business and also outside of your business in your market. Narrative power is something we all experience every day when we do a lot of things, but we don't necessarily notice. It's like energy or electricity, if you will. But you can create it and you can generate it with a specific set of practices that span from leadership to marketing, and that help you really grow a business with a strength that helps you do things like differentiate in your market, onboard your ideal clients, operate with a higher degree of purpose, and become a leader that is really more passionate about what they do, and act like a leader, what I call a leader on a mission. All right, so I'll pause there because this was like in 2 or 3 minutes my resume.
Production. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah. You
I can say,
we went from the start until what you do right now
yeah, yeah.
with the that strategic narrative, and so you co-founded a few companies. You arrived here and worked with other consulting companies. Did you see some notice some differences in the work environment between your work in France and your work here?
Yeah, many differences. I think, Diogene, that those differences were not only cultural differences, but there are also differences in terms of the era, the time, at which I was operating. And I came from very traditional consulting. I started with a firm called A.T. Kearney. It's a
Mhm.
competitor from BCG and others. Strategy, high level strategy consulting firm where everything was very hierarchical, very codified. You had to speak a certain way, design slides a very certain way, only with black and white, only with black color, no color, just black, right?
Wow.
Just black. And you had to go through a whole week long course to learn how to do it. And you had to dress a certain way. And so that's how I started in consulting. And then, 10 years later, I show up in the US on the West Coast, and okay, nobody cares about how you dress. you're, you're more than welcome to to venture to new channels of communications way beyond slides. So in my career, coming here, I thought, oh my God, this is such a great breath of fresh air. What about if I even crossed my mind, what about if I don't even use slides? What if I do everything on pen and paper? So I learned a technique called graphic facilitation, and I became really a master at the whiteboard. I was known for that with my clients. Graphic facilitation is using your listening and thinking abilities to turn what you hear into drawings, and really bring everybody along up to speed with these large diagrams on a big board. So these are just a few of the cultural differences that I noticed, but I think it was also because there are some new trends, in the 2000s, 2010s. We don't do consulting the same way anymore. I really enjoy the influence that I've received from the West Coast, where consulting also marries things like spirituality, energy, embodiment. I think and I'm very, very grateful for that, but very excited because I see more possibilities now in the way we build and operate companies in meshing disciplines that used to be very, very separated. Like if I had tried to bring up the theme of embodiment and spirituality in my SAP days, people would have looked at me and said like, who's that nut? But these days in the boardroom, it's okay to talk about vulnerability, gratefulness, things that are much more emotional, related to our emotions, because of the great work of people who have studied what is emotional intelligence and things like that. You know, major differences.
Okay, and does that also partially explain why you created Meta Helm and have that focus on the strategic narrative?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm glad you picked up on that. MetaHelm is really the illustration of a firm that looks at an organization as a holistic human system
Mhm.
and not just a business based on financial results or other KPIs. I wanted to provide a system for business leaders to be more holistic and think about what they do not just in terms of a set of departments or functions, but look at it more as a system of what I call a system of stories and
Mhm.
practices and norms that I call a narrative. So this was directly influenced from that big variety of disciplines that I was able to experience and for which I thought, okay, my question was, how do we connect these all together?
Yeah,
Right.
and
So
you mentioned the word stories, and I think that's storytelling is important in understanding if you want to understand really where you want to go, how you want to serve your clients with the strategic narrative. In To me, it's only let's say 4 or 5 years ago that really started to be interested into storytelling, the importance of storytelling. But you go one step further.
yes.
So can you explain, okay, your vision of what is storytelling and how to go that one step further into the narrative?
So storytelling is by definition a human thing.
Hmm.
We survived as a species because and thanks to our ability to tell stories, share stories, and transmit them from one tribe to the other, one generation to the other. And so, in the past couple of decades in our field, Diogene, in business, we've heard so much about storytelling. So I've always been very excited to hear about this. But what the business community hasn't heard a lot about yet, that other communities have really clearly understood, is the fact that you can tell all the stories you want. You can be a great storyteller. You can practice storytelling. That's all fine. But you should not ignore that these stories connect together in something that is a narrative. So most people don't make the difference between the word story and narrative. And I was there at some point. I would catch myself use those two words interchangeably. And
Hmm.
it's true, if you look in the dictionary, you will see that the definition is almost identical. But if you dig a little deeper into really understanding what a narrative is a way to think about something. It has a viewpoint. And very often time you will catch yourself and your colleagues say, oh yeah, that the narrative about society, the narrative
Hmm.
about,
Hmm.
our organization, the narrative about, uh, I'm just trying to think about an example. Oh yeah, the narrative about sustainability and our environment. So when we say this, what are we referring to? We're referring to something that is much greater than just a set of stories, right? And what bugs me in the business world is that we think that just one story will be able to fix all our problems. We say, oh, we have to tell our story, but we kind of ignore that the reason why we operate with a certain level of performance or joy is because we have so many stories to share, to listen to, and to connect together. right? So that's a major, major difference here. And when I bring this to my client, it's typically eye-opening to them. It's also very reassuring because it gets rid of the pressure to think that you will have to come with that one perfect story that, people say, oh, our pitch, our story. It's just a lot of pressure. You don't have
Yeah.
to do that. You don't have to do that. But you have to be cognizant. You have to be understanding that the narrative that you create in your business has such a strong influence. In fact, I would say ignore it at your own peril, ignoring at your own loss,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
if you will. So,
And that's very interesting because what you say is more than just a set of different stories. So a lot of companies have that, mission, vision, values,
right.
story. Maybe it's not exactly the name of the page, but something that relates to their story. So, do you help those companies uh, uncover the narrative that they already have, or it's about, as you said, kind of creating
Mm.
a new one?
Everyone and every organization by default has a narrative, whether you want it or not, whether you want to recognize it or not. There are things that you show up with. So what is the narrative of the expert? An expert. Consultants want to be expert. So let's
Mhm.
take that as an because I know that's what our audience will be interested in hearing. An expert shows up in a different way than a vendor, for instance,
Mhm.
right? Or a service provider. An expert is supposed to first diagnose and ask questions, right? An expert is supposed to also have a perspective on how to fix specific problems and hopefully a perspective that they've honed and researched and explored through a lot of cases and experimentation,
Mhm.
right? So if I say this, I see you nod. We could say that we all agree that these are kind of the characteristics of the narrative of the expert.
The expert, yeah.
See how I didn't tell you a story yet, but I was able to point to a narrative that you and I understand. So it brings us together, right?
Mhm.
So with the companies I help, who typically want to be better professional services firm, they want to command higher fees, they want to be differentiated in their market, they want to be able to hire the right people more smooth. I also work with solopreneurs who want to not only build a business that is successful, but also a business that they love. We start by exploring, okay, well, what is your narrative right now? What do you think it is? But also, what are the things you do to build that narrative? And there is oftentimes a gap between what we say we are and what we want to be and what we actually do. And that's my job to surface that gap, first of all, and help my clients close that gap. So that may require sometimes to completely rebuild the narrative, which is a lot of work, which means rethinking the firm entirely, new strategic positioning, new business mission, new marketing approach. I mean, new everything. I've got 12 practices that I look at, and that's a big endeavor there. It's very rare. No firm has to throw everything away. There's always great things and strength. And I know you're a big proponent to look at strengths versus weaknesses. So
Mhm.
I align with you on that. Um, and so we look at these and say, okay, how could we change that narrative? How could we operate differently?
That's interesting. And you said you work with organizations. So what type? When I say type, I mean, yeah, you said professional services
Right.
organizations, but um, and solopreneurs. Uh, but are they all based in the US? Professional service can be, let's say, in a sense, large. That could be
Right.
legal, could be accounting, could be. Is there a certain type or?
So I'll start with the people that I work a little
Yeah.
less with.
Yeah.
Typically lawyers, and there's a good example because lawyers have to have certifications. So they come by definition. Lawyers come with a narrative that has a lot of power. There's a lot of power behind their profession. You have to be certified. You have to take exams, the bar exams and so on. I tend to work more with practitioners who are more independent, free, where for which the platform they can use to build visibility is up to them to build. So that would be management consultants, coaches, marketing and design firms can really, really be creative and come up with net new thinking and things that may be a little bit, groundbreaking. Whereas in contrast, lawyers are much more traditional. It's interesting. I take this example because I just had a meeting with a lawyer right before this podcast. So there are some exceptions, but these are the categories of clients I have. And yes, I work with solopreneurs and at the same time leadership teams of larger firms. Leadership teams of larger firms typically will range from, I don't know, 5 to 15 people, say, more, give or take. So it would be, and I use the same approach. The process is different because in the case of a solopreneur, it's easier to make decisions on the spot. They have no one to ask to validate decisions with or align. They just can, move forward very, very quickly. However, we faced hurdles like self-doubts or rigidity to change or, emotional attachments to something they may have built before. Whereas for teams, clearly the key topic is always alignment. Like, how do we agree on the new narrative that we want to build? That's really the hot topic right there.
Yeah, yeah, I see. And do you have some kind of success story or example to share of something that you did for a professional service organization?
Yeah, yeah. I did some work with some great work with a firm called Spencer Stewart. They are a executive search and recruiting company. This is a big firm. They're international. I think that information is public. But their revenue is close to $1 billion, something like that. Don't quote me on this, but my point is it's a large
It's a
firm.
high, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and I work with the CEO search practice there to help them reshape the way they approach selling the work to their clients. They used to. It's an old firm, very reputable, and they've gotten used. They were kind of used to just pick up the phone, and just answer requests, and they're starting to be challenged in their market and invited to now have to pitch, right? So when you're invited to pitch, it means that you're put in a competitive situation where you
yeah,
have to prove that how good you are. So the narrative here shifts in not your advantage. The narrative shifts to, hey, we're going to audition you because wow, you have to prove that
yeah, yeah,
we can trust you. So what I'm referring to.
yeah,
So I help them redesign the way they look at their market, the trends that they see, and reshape a new point of view on their market so that they would be less dependent on that whole new system that they were kind of obliged to go through. So I increased their narrative power, and as a result, they were able to first of all recreate some kind of excitement for some of their service offerings internally.
yeah,
So when you have that, when people are more engaged, more bought in, like it's they see that the service offering is their own because they've put their fingerprints on it. Like they participated in that project. Man, the energy is so different, and therefore the win rates are so different.
exactly.
And with more pride and confidence and clarity in how we move forward together. Um, it's okay to command higher fees and be more profitable. And I'm kind of cascading here all
Yeah,
the benefits that I've seen. In the end, they delivered much better work. So Spencer Stewart places CEOs for corporations like Wells Fargo, Starbucks, um, many of the big names here out
Yeah,
there, and so narrative power for them is worth a lot of money,
yeah,
right? So
yeah. I think it's a good demonstration of the added value of the service that you provide, because your service is not named digital marketing or accounting. You know, it's not like something, if I can say, tangible, but it
yes,
has a ripple effect
yeah,
on absolutely everything. And
yeah.
yeah,
I'm glad you noticed that, Diogene, because my hurdle, my my kryptonite is the fact that it's very intangible. So I'm constantly developing ways to make it tangible for people, to show them, to illustrate and say, look at this specific piece that we developed. And sometimes I happen to update, to actually work on the sense of purpose. And people want me to help them with their purpose statement.
yeah.
I don't believe that that purpose could be encapsulated in just a statement. I think it's a myth and a big mistake. I prefer to talk about the sense of purpose, but then how do you make this tangible? Well, I go and help them collect anecdotes, stories, statements, situations, case studies where we've seen that this new sense of purpose has really had a lot of added value in terms of business results.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, great, great point. So you think so? If a company just has a purpose statement, do you think it's because the owner or the leadership thinks that is the end? They just need the statement, or what's the difference that you make with sense of purpose?
Sense of purpose, yeah. So purpose statements have been, became really popular in the past 20, 30 years
Yeah.
in corporate world, because we feel good about a purpose statement, right? We feel like, okay, we've got it. It's like the holy grail of why we exist.
Hmm.
If you walk around the floors of our, or if you ask just any organization, people will give you a first of all, I still have yet to see one single company where everybody knows the purpose statement, right? And second of all, we all diverge from that statement. Why? It's because we're human and not everybody is excited about the same thing. So it's really hard to really encapsulate something that is more the level of a sense of energy, or why we get excited, into just to one or two lines. So for me, I prefer to think about a purpose statement, if you really want one, as a book title, right? You write the book first and then you give it a title, but a book title is never perfect. It's never perfect. It's a choice you make, and you pick the best title possible at the given time. But all authors, all sensible authors will tell you, well, now that I look at this book, maybe I should have used a different title.
Hmm.
However, I see purpose as something, first of all, that evolves, right? It's not, and if you look at every organization started with a specific reason why they wanted to be in business, and over time they evolved because they pivoted, the market put pressure on what they're doing, or new technology was introduced. And so purpose, really, we have to all kind of be clear with that. It's not something that is static, right? It's
Hmm.
something that changes every day, all the time, that we feel differently. So I like that, to make that separation. So am I against purpose statements? No. But I am really in favor of a process that, I'll say it this way. I'm really in favor of turning it into a process rather than a product.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. I see. And talking about, you mentioned a book. You actually do have a book um, on strategic narrative. Can you elaborate on that? Because it's
Yeah. So I wrote an ebook called Strategic Narrative. It's available on my website, and the subtitle is a simple method that business leaders can use to make everybody understand their business, get behind it, and believe in it. And it's free. It's available. It's there. I wrote that book after having written a 250 pages manuscript,
wow.
and throwing it away because I realized, who wants to read 250 pages these days? So I
Yeah.
turn all of the content I mean, I still read 250 pages books, but my point was I really want to cut the time um, that people will need to invest in getting the
Mhm.
concept of strategic narrative. It's also a good exercise for me, good forcing function. I have to walk my talk and show that I'm able to articulate my narrative in a short amount of time. So that ebook is reads in 13 minutes. I have a video version, and it explains why strategic alignment is important and how to do it beyond the simple concept of storytelling, what I call storytelling 1.0, which is for me a little passe. That it's kind of I say in my book,
Outdated. Yeah.
yeah, it's outdated, it's dead. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great, and that you mentioned that. I mean, for anyone that will be interested in reading the book, it's indeed a book that you read in 13 minutes,
yeah,
and available on on the website. And more and more, there is more and more content that gets shorter and shorter, where you have to go straight to the point. So, yes, I think there will always be some 250 books, but there will be more and more shorter version
right,
of content. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, another thing is that you have a newsletter and you also update it pretty regularly,
right.
like 3 times. It's the first time I hear that 3 times a week is a lot. I think it's a lot.
Well,
Usually it's like once a week or once every other week. So yeah, what's your process to find new things to say and to deliver?
well, first of all, I used to publish 7 times a week.
Oh my days. Okay, okay. It used
You're
to be
falling off
daily.
your chair. He's like, okay, this guy's nuts. So it's 3 times a week. I Here's the thing. I used to believe that I would need a lot of ideas first to to own the fact that I could be writing, at a high frequency like that.
Mhm.
And so therefore, because I never felt like I had enough ideas, I would delay this moment, you know, push the can down the road and delay and delay and delay and delay and delay. For years, I contemplated writing, and I was also very scared because English is not my native language.
Yeah.
I became really fluent in English in the past 10 years.
Mhm.
But keep in mind, I've been concerned for 25, so I always thought, okay, I should do that one day. But I'm very scared, and I don't have, and these are not my own ideas. And who am I even? I'm an imposter. I'm not an expert. Like,
Mm.
everybody's going to
Mhm.
think that, oh my gosh, that those ideas have already been explored. So my inner narrative, which is part of strategic narrative, is also the narrative that you have inside your own mind for yourself, was off. It was not good, and it
Mhm.
was not the correct narrative if I wanted to operate as an expert. So I finally realized that, and that was through the help of one of my mentors and coaches. His name is Philip Morgan, and he got me to write every day for 90 days.
Mhm.
What am I saying? Not just write, but publish. So I got an email app, ConvertKit, similar to Mailchimp,
Yeah.
and I just added, my family and a few friends and asked their permissions. Like, can I just add you on this email list? I'm just testing something. It probably will be very bad, but I want to try to really see what happens. And after 90 days, I realized that I was not publishing a lot because I had a lot of ideas. I realized that I had a lot of ideas because I was publishing a lot. See, I flipped the
Mm.
narrative on its head.
Wow.
So the more I would write, the more I would generate ideas. Like in one article, I realized, I found myself with like, oh my gosh, I just finished this article and this produced 3 additional thoughts for 3 more emails.
Mhm. So
So, so it's just like a flywheel. In the beginning,
yes.
it's really, really hard. You're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Everybody's going to think I'm stupid. And you just doubt yourself. I mean, that was my case. If you're not in that situation, I'm good for you. I feel like most of us are in this situation. So
Mhm.
I just kind of got going and going and going and going. So I ended up publishing 7 days a week, nonstop for one entire year. And then I thought, okay, so that led me to the creation of this book. That led me to really refine my positioning, define my method. I trademarked it. A whole bunch of really great benefits came out of this exercise. And after 1 year, I now wanted to experiment with video. So I have a YouTube channel with a daily insight. I publish one video a day. I started repurposing my content on LinkedIn. I dabble a little bit with Twitter, but I'm kind of inconsistent on Twitter sometimes. And so I had to reduce the publication on email, to kind of offset. So I feel like I have a fairly good rhythm, but I will continue to evolve it. I have new ideas now to continue with that. So
Yeah.
if you're hearing that story and you're interested in changing your narrative about how you show up as an expert, which you should really, really, do you know, Diogene, do you know one expert that has never published any piece of content, video, audio, or image?
No.
No, it doesn't
Uh,
exist, right?
no, I was about to say even some of my parents, but no, even them, they
So
so no.
publication is what experts do. So if you claim to be an expert and you feel like, yeah, I could share my content more often. Yes, you're right. You're right. You should do that more often. Now the trick is to do it in a meaningful way, in a way that makes you happy. So in a joyful way,
Yeah.
meaningful way, in a way that is easy. And for that, you kind of have to let go of the idea that content publication is just about generating leads.
Yeah, indeed, indeed, and has that also that will be like one of my last questions, but has that commitment to create that content, has that helped you in your conversations with existing clients or with prospect?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, it has led me to actually now create courses
Hmm.
that I offer as part of my client engagements. So it comes with my client engagements.
Hmm.
I've got 9 courses online, and I'm about to launch another batch of 3. So I have 12 now. And so not only that, but when you're in the sales process and you listen to your prospective client and they tell you about a pattern that you've seen yet and yet, over and over and over again, like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Hey, I've got this article where I discuss this and I give you some tips and some hints and ways to look at this. Let me forward it to you. What happens? You build trust, you build a connection. You also can test how your potential clients reacts to that. So that sends you signal. Like, if you let them simmer a little bit with your content, are they getting back to you? Are they reacting to that? Does it click for them? All of these are really important ways to vet your clients, and see if they're a good fit for you. Too many consultants out there will just do anything to get clients. They sound really desperate. But when you've really invested in figuring out your own thinking, there's this your narrative power just expands
Yeah.
dramatically, and all of a sudden you feel a lot more confident, a lot more in control, a lot more respected. Yeah, so all of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, the narrative changes and it becomes empowering for the consultant. So that was really a great interview, Guillaume. My very last question would be to know for you, what does having a consulting lifestyle mean?
Consulting lifestyle mean for me aligning my personal mission to how I operate as a business person.
Hmm.
So for me, it has always been, I want to see consultants and consulting firms feel more like a source of inspiration versus a place where people just grind and just wish they could leave. There's this funny
Yeah.
quote about big firms. Big firms are the places that everybody dream of getting into a big firm, and then once they're in there, their main dream is to leave it. And I don't think that's right. I think this should change. So that's my point
Yeah.
of view. So my consulting lifestyle is to really build a narrative in a way that helps me align what I came to do on this planet with what I do every day with my clients.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Excellent, Guillaume. And you have mentioned that you have your website metahelm.com. Is
Yes.
there any is it the best way for people that would like to get in touch with you? Is it the best way to reach out to you?
Yes. Go to metahelm.com, get on my email list. If you are interested in also get in touch with me, LinkedIn is a good way. If you want to see what I talk about, I post frequently on LinkedIn. So these two places,
Okay.
metahelm.com and LinkedIn.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent, Guillaume. So thanks very much, and I will definitely think more also about my own narrative, make it more strategic. Thank you.
Absolutely, Diogene. It was a pleasure. Your podcast is awesome, and I was so thrilled when I found out we could do that together. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Consulting Lifestyle Podcast. If you have enjoyed the episode, leave a review on iTunes or one of your preferred podcasting platform. And if you want to further our relationship, please join our community. Our community is available at consultinglifestyle.fm/community. Looking forward to keep in touch with you.